In this video, I'm going to show you how to create an edit preset. So a brush preset is a preset that allows you to apply a brush to an image. An edit preset is how you copy for future use edits that you like that you've made to an image. So usually you'll want to create these edit presets when you're making edits to a group of photos that you shot at about the same time. So for instance, if you're outside and you spend an hour shooting whatever it is outside, the light will generally not have shifted very much, and so this edit preset that you're going to create for these images, you will be able to apply to all of the images in that series and for future use as well. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to choose this photo of this little dog, which is number 36 over here. And I'm choosing that because in my film strip, I have two shots of that dog. So I'm going to make edits to one, I'm going to save the preset, and then I'm going to apply those to the other. So I'm going to go up into develop, and this little doggy is going to be my main image. And I'm just going to start doing my edits. So I'll come over here, and I think I like this color temperature. Let's see if I like it a little bit better that way. No, I don't. I like it cooler. I can see that some of the shadows are pretty deep here, so I might bring these shadows up a bit. And I might bring up the whites a little bit just so that I can see his fur a little bit better. If you want to see what you're doing while you're editing, you can pop over here to your navigator, and you can either choose 100%, which is going to zoom in quite tightly. 66 is standard ships with Lightroom, or I can click these up and down arrows here and I can choose a different zoom level here. So I'm going to choose 50% because that'll give me enough. And I'm going to hold my space bar to move this around a little bit so I can just get on him a little. Actually, I'm going to go over into Navigator and I'll choose it in Navigator. So this box that's in Navigator lets you zoom in on a specific spot of your image. And I'm particularly interested in what's happening with the contrast between his fur and his, I don't know if he's a boy, but there you go. So I'm going to check out those blacks and make sure that they look nice and black. And then I'm going to make sure my whites are kind of contrasty. Now remember, this is a global adjustment. So just watch the lights on the side here. When I'm pulling this white to the right, I'm adjusting all of the whites. So I just have to watch that I don't overdo it. And if I do get too bright here, I can always pull my highlights down a little bit without losing too much of the white. So for this puppy, the texture of the fur is obviously important. So I'm going to use texture to bring that up. So you'll see this is getting a little more texturized. And if I go the other way, obviously it becomes really soft, which is interesting, but not what I want for this image. So I'm going to come to about 23. Sometimes I go really hard on this. If I'm shooting a brick wall or something, I'll go really high on texture. Clarity will also sharpen up the image, but it also can enhance blacks, which in this image is going to be interesting. So if I pull it all the way to the right, you can see it kind of becomes, I don't know, a bit muddy, and it's an interesting look, but I'm not sure if it's what I want. Let's go back out to 100% and see. I'm going to fit. It's less visible this way, but it's not too bad. It's kind of interesting. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to just touch these just to see if that's an effect I like. That's starting to look really green in the background. So if I may want to pull that vibrance right out, because this dog is black and white, the color, any changes I make to color are not going to affect the dog really. So, I can almost get a black and white image by doing this. Don't do a black and white image from here, by the way. Saturation. So I don't like either of these. So I'm going to click on the words, vibrance, double click, and saturation, double click, and those are reset to 0 now. So I think I'll just pull down those greens a little bit because I don't want them to overpower my subject, which is this doggy here. Then I'm going to come down into tone curve, and let's see what I can do here. So I have just the general parametric curve selected, that main one there, and I can come into the curve itself and start monkeying around with it here, or I can come into region and I can use specific sliders to do what I need to do. Either's fine. Whatever you want to do is totally fine. This is where you get into some creative effects. Now, if I want to actually have access to the full range of this parametric, I can click on this white. This is the second one in from the left. It's called the point curve, and that allows me to start playing with all sorts of things in here. So I can change the the look of that image by doing that. And then I can bring the whites up a little bit. I can bring the blacks down a little bit. So now this is starting to look like an old-fashioned photo. I don't love this particularly, but just so you can see what you can do here. If I don't like that, I can either go Command or Control Z, and that will undo sequentially my effects. I'm going to go back to the parametric curve. I think I like that just the way it is. I'm going to leave color grading for now. This is where you would apply a sepia tone type thing. And I'm going to come into this HSL color panel here. So HSL stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. It's just the acronym for each of those panels or each of those options. So in your hue, you can change all of these colors selectively. So for instance, there's some orange in the back here. So if I were to come into this orange slider here, if you're watching the back of the photo, I've brought that all the way to the left. So now that orange is turned into quite red. Or if I come this way, it'll turn it into really yellow. Obviously, neither of those is optimal. Let's see what happens if I bring this yellow. So if left makes it more orange and right makes it really greeny yellow, also not optimal. Greens, I can change the hue of those to more yellow to really, really not nice green. So again, creative effects. It's late in the year right now when I shot this, so I'm inclined to bring that a little bit to the left and make that a more fall green. So, and then there aren't any of these colors in this image, so I'm not going to bother with the rest of these sliders. In saturation, so this green is quite a nice hue, and if I wanted to bolden that up a little bit, I can come to the right, or I can pull the greens right out of it. Obviously, we don't want to pull the greens right out of it. We want a little color in there. And then the luminance is basically, it's the brightness of whatever color you're using. So I can pull this green and you can see it becomes quite bright. So it might give the impression that the sun's hitting it. So basically that's what luminance does. It's brightness and darkness in a specific color. There's an interesting little tool in these panels and many other panels that you can selectively target a color. So right up here, you'll see this little saturation slider. So if you click on that or hover over it, you'll see you'll get a up and down arrow. Click, and then you're going to come into this image, and you can click somewhere on a color that you want to adjust. So if you're watching watch this panel over here as I'm in the image. And as I slide around this image, you can see which color is lit up. So right now yellow is lit up. And if I slip down here, green, there aren't any blues or aquas in here. So, oh, look, there's a blue there. So whichever of those is lit up is the one that the color you're going to be working with. So I'll come up here to this green, and I want to change the saturation of this green. So I'm going to click and hold and drag down. And as I drag down, the green and the yellow sliders are going more and more to the left, and the color is coming out of that green, but the orange is not being touched. And if I slide up, then that's increasing the greens and the yellows in that photograph. So I'm going to stick it right about there because that's what I like. So that's a selective color adjustment right there. And the same thing with hue. So if I click on this one here, now I'm working with the hue of whatever color in here. So again, if I come into the image and I click and hold, I can see right away that the word green is lit up. And as I slide this left and right, up and down, you can see that that color is adjusting. So I'm going to get back to that just kind of fall yellow. And same thing with luminance. So you've got that same little button there. Up and down will increase and decrease the luminance of that color. So I don't like that. So I'm going to go Control Z on my PC, and that'll set it back to where I was. You can reset all of them at one time by clicking the word that's above all the sliders. So if I were to click luminance here, that green would reset to 0. And if I had touched any of these, anything that I'd done here, if I click on this, they all reset to 0. If you want to reset selectively, you can click on the word, whatever color word. And so if I double click on green, it'll just reset it. Okay. So I'm going to come down here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the detail on this image. So I like my images pretty sharp, but I don't want to over sharpen them. And this is your secret weapon with sharpening. So in order to see what you're doing with sharpening, using this masking tool, if you hold down your Alt key or your Option key on a Mac and then you slide this to the right, your image right now is not sharpened. This masking isn't applying to anything. As you pull this to the right, you're telling Lightroom to apply this sharpening to less and less of the image, which is to say, this sharpening is just applying now to the edges of things. And I don't necessarily just want the edges. I want, some texture in that sidewalk and in that dog's fur. So right now there's no masking at all. And now right over here, it's just the very edges. So whatever's white in this image is where sharpening is being applied to. And usually about halfway is pretty good. So I'm going to just come a little bit more to the right, and then I can release that. And down here, now this image doesn't matter. This is not a noisy image. I shot this at, I think, 100 ISO. Let's see if I can tell. Yeah, I did. I shot that at 100 ISO. I can see right there. So I'm not going to bother with the luminance because that's a function that will pull out or decrease grainy artifacts in there. Also, if you shoot on a high ISO, you might also see these color artifacts, which I won't because this is a low ISO image. But if you do see color artifacts in an image, this color slider right here, if it comes right to the very, very right edge, it really reduces those color artifacts. So if you've shot something that is in sort of the 5,000 or above range and you're into this detail panel, do come down to the color slider and pull it to the right and see if it changes it in a pleasant way. So when I import my images, the lens corrections are already applied, so they will probably be applied here. So in lens corrections, you have your profile, and because my images import with this already attached to it, it's already applied. So my lens is a Sigma, it's a 24-105 that I used, and the profile that I'm using is the Adobe color profile. So that's all good. I don't have any barrel distortion in this image, so I don't have to change this here, but just so you can see what happens, it looks really weird, but I don't know, if you like it, it's kind of cool. You can do that. And then the other way. So this will affect straight edges and linear planes. I don't need that in this image. When you're using this distortion slider, it's a good idea to click this constrain crop, and you'll see it here. When I'm done, when I stop using this tool, because I have constrain crop selected, when I change this, the program will adjust the crop automatically. If I don't have this on, I'm going to go back to the crop tool so you can see the whole image here. So you can see what's happened. So this is what's happened with the distortion. And if I were to have left that with no constrained crop on the image, you would see this image with all this area showing as white. But when you use constrained crop, the crop is constrained to inside the image and inside that distortion. So I'm going to reset this now to 0. And then you can see, I have my crop tool enabled still, and you can see that crop is now set to what happened with the distortion enabled, and I don't want it to be there. So I'll just go back up to my crop tool, and I'm going to click original, and I'm going to click as shot. And that just sets it back to the original out of the camera. Okay, so that's all good. Lens corrections. Transform I won't apply here. It doesn't matter because we don't have very many uprates that matter in here. Effects, this is where you can add a bit of a vignette. So I'll click done to get rid of my crop tool. And then you will see, I'm going to pull this all the way to the left so you can see what happens. So this black area around here is a vignette, and that's obviously too much. So what I do in here, in order to see what I'm doing with my vignette tool, the first thing I do is I'm going to have to activate it, because if it isn't activated, none of these tools down here or these parts of this tool are able to be used. So I'll pull this over a little bit so I can start seeing that. And then I'm going to get into my feather here, and I'm going to pull that all the way to the left because I want to see what I'm doing. So I'll make this dark. This is too dark, but what I'm doing now is I want to see what shape this is and where it's located. So this is my midpoint, so that's going to bring that in closer to my dog. I cannot move this around. Unfortunately, Adobe or Lightroom doesn't allow me to place that this area in a different place. I would love to pull that down a little bit to the left. Doesn't allow me to do that. So it's as good as it's going to get. So I'll pull that midpoint there, and then I'm going to maybe change the roundness a little bit. Okay, so I like the way that looks. I want it to be a little bit less close in, so I'll do that. And then I'm going to lighten that up till I get to a point that I kind of like the look of the vignette. And then I'm going to increase my feather. So you can see that that just goes away and you can still see the vignette. So vignettes are nice for these kinds of portraits, pets particularly, but also people, because they focus your view down into your subject a little bit. So then the next item here is grain. This is not a grainy photo, but what this does is it adds grain. So for instance, if you wanted to create a black and white that looks like a newspaper image, let's just turn this quickly into a black and white because it'll make more sense. So I go into basic and I'm just going to click black and white. This isn't going to be a nice edit, but you'll be able to see what this does. So I'm going to come back into effects and then I'm going to grab this grain and I'm going to pull it all the way to the right. And I'm going to pull the size to the right. And now I'm going to increase this so you can see what's happened. So see all this graininess in here? So if I pull that down, now you can see that the grain is really tiny. Looks like, you know, bad snowstorm. And this is how much is in there. So that's what happens. So I don't believe that it's a great choice for this particular image, but I don't know, some people really like this kind of a look. I don't like this for this image. So I'm going to undo grain by clicking on the word grain, and I'm going to reset those all back to 0. And I'm going to go back up into my basic panel and I'm going to select color, and that'll set it back to where I was. I still think those darks are a little bit dark. Let me just bring this exposure up a tiny little bit. Okay. So the last thing is calibration, and calibration is such an amazing tool. It can create some beautiful effects on images, and this can change the time of year that you shot this image. So I'll start with this red primary here. So they have two components, the hue and the saturation, and they only affect oranges and reds in this image. So if I pull this all the way to the left, you can see back here that's turned into a pink. Maybe not great, but, and this will increase that saturation. So if I go really, really pink and really, really saturated, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Let's see if we can change. So now we can really change that green again, and we can increase or decrease the amount, the saturation of that green. I actually kind of like that. That's really pretty, but I don't like this. So I'm just going to click red primary. That resets those two at the same time. And then down here, let's see what happens. Okay, so now I'm going to change a little bit the time of day by doing this. So these are creative effects. This is not a must. This is, oh, what can I do with this and is it cool? All right, I kind of look the shape, I like the look and everything that's going on in this photo. The last thing I'm going to do is I am actually going to apply a proper crop to this because I shot this so far away that I don't really like how far away I am from this little puppy. So I'll bring this down. And if you're working with kind of rule of thirds, your subject wants to be in sort of a dynamic place of that image. So just pull this around and I'm going to stick my subject into this set of 4 squares here. So here's your center points. And then this will be sort of a dynamic area. And these 4 squares will be a dynamic area, or these 4 down here, or these 4. So get your subject sort of close to that, you know, sort of dynamic area as much as you can. And I'm going to click done. Okay, so I like everything that I did to this image. So what I'm going to do now, because I want to apply these, save this as a preset, and then apply the preset to this next image over here, is I'm going to go to where it says presets here. So if you don't see it, grab your slider and go right to the top of that panel. Okay, presets. And then you're going to click plus, and you're going to create a preset. So you can do a couple things here. When I create this preset, it'll go into a group called user presets, which are available over here. I'll come back to that in a second. Actually, I will go there right now. So if you come over here, pull the slider down, you can see that at the bottom of my list here is user presets. So that is a folder that ships with Lightroom. That folder is always there, but you can create your own folder. So that's what I like to do. So I'll show you what I've done in mine. This Truman is a company that I shoot for, and these are presets that I've made for listings that I shoot for that particular company. And I created those because they decorate their homes and they paint their homes pretty much the same. I'm shooting show homes and things. This folder here is a folder that I created for rodeos that we shoot. So, you know, there's some presets, and they don't work. You can see them being applied over here to my photo, but they don't work for this image. But anyway, they do work when we're shooting in certain, you know, sort of predictable environments. These are all my real estate presets, so I'll close that down. This is a folder I've created. This was a folder that I created for another project that I did. This is a folder I created for a specific client, and that is a folder I created for a specific location. So to create this preset, I've made all these edits to this photo. I like the way it looks. I come to where it says presets. I click that plus arrow, and then I'm going to click create a preset. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose, am I going to create a group? You don't have to. If you want to put it in user presets, that's totally fine. There won't be anything in there if you haven't created a preset yet in your program. And as you create these presets, that user presets will start to have presets in it. So I'm going to name this Little Dog. It doesn't matter what you call these. So you choose whatever name you want to have. The more descriptive, the better. And if you buy presets, you'll see that whoever created the presets you buy has just given them the names that they want. So I'm going to call this Little Dog. And the last thing I do is I leave everything that I've done here because Lightroom has captured all of the adjustments that I've made. So you don't have to add anything else. The only thing I don't necessarily want to click in here is the crop. But I'm going to just leave this as it is. So create. There you go. So that preset is now created. So if I come down into my user presets, so here's user presets, and if I scroll down this list, I will see my new preset called Little Dog. So I just have one photo here, and I'm only going to apply these effects to another photo right now. So you have two options. You can apply this preset to the other photo, or as you're still working on this selected photo, you can click copy. So we've created the preset and we can use it, or we can click copy, which is going to copy exactly all of these moves that we made on the right-hand side. And I don't have crop selected here. And that's actually good. I don't always want to apply my crops to another photo because it doesn't always work. Okay. So I have two options here. I'm going to click now into number 37, which is the second image I have of this little dog. This has not been edited at all. So I can go over here and I can hover over this preset that I created and see the effect. And if I click on that, it'll apply the effect to that image. Or if I'm going to reset this, and now because I've copied those edits that I've made to the previous image, I can click paste, and it's going to give me exactly the same as what that preset is. So that's how that works. If you have questions, pop me a text.